Hey y'all, welcome to Art of the Budget. Today we're going to talk about building credit, specifically how I built my credit up from basically nothing. My name is Nicole, my pronouns are she and her, and I live in the Pacific Northwest on what is the traditional territory of the Coast Salish Nation. I'm an artist and educator, currently bumbling my way through budgeting, saving, and planning for retirement, and sharing what I learn along the way. I wanted to talk about building credit because I'm in some Facebook groups and I talk to people and I basically hear people wondering about this a lot. I am certainly not trying to give financial advice. This is not a financial advice. I'm not a financial planner of any kind. I've got no qualifications, but I did want to talk about my experience building up my credit. So, if you're like me and you reach this point where you're like, maybe I should pay attention to some of this stuff, you might want to check out your credit score. There are a lot of ways to do this. If you have a bank account or a credit card of any kind, they may give you access to your credit score. Now, there are several models of credit score, and I don't really know a lot about why there are so many models, but obviously you've heard of the FICO credit score, and that's maybe what banks use, or if you're trying to buy a house, what the lenders will use to look at your credit score, which is basically like how good of a risk are you? That's what the credit score is essentially telling them. And your FICO credit score is what a lot of people talk about, a lot of people use. Now, if you use a free service like Credit Karma, which hashtag not sponsored, but I do really like Credit Karma, they're going to give you, or if you look at a lot of your, like I have several ways that I look at my score, but Credit Karma and some of the banks will give you what's called a Vantage score. I don't know who Vantage is. I don't know what that means, but it's not the FICO score. And I've heard a lot of people complain that their Credit Karma score isn't, the FICO score. So for purposes of like going to get a mortgage, you might want to do free annualcreditreport.com. I will put the link down below where you can pull your credit report and your score for free once a year from each of the bureaus and get your actual FICO score. But for purposes of just building your credit, the Credit Karma or your bank score, whatever, works just fine. And the reason is because what you want to look at is actually not so much the score. It will be good if you see that score going up bit by bit by bit. That is the goal. But what you want to look at is the report. You want to make sure that the report looks good, and anything that doesn't look good, you want to fix. Okay, so that's like the basic credit score situation. I wanted to talk about my personal situation. I'm going to just be kind of vague because just for like security reasons, because there's like, I don't know, it's the internet. But I, years and years and years ago, had to have a surgery, an appendectomy, while I was living abroad, but visiting the US and didn't have health insurance, which, in case you didn't know, it's real bad. And it was really expensive, and I was in debt for a long time. And for that reason, I didn't have any credit cards for most of my adult life until recently when I started travel hacking. But basically, my credit was kind of a mess. And at a certain point, it was no longer a mess, but I was essentially starting from zero. And I was an adult. I wasn't to college student. I didn't have access to predatory credit card companies like preying on young adults. So I had to build my credit in a different way. I was banking with Wells Fargo at the time, not by choice. They had bought my bank that I had before, and I received a credit card offer from them, and I decided to see if I could get it. And I could not. I was rejected, and the feedback, I don't remember if I called or it actually came on the rejection, but it said that my length of credit history was not sufficient. So as you can see, that's about 15% of your score. So I started doing some research, and this was before I discovered YouTube, personal finance YouTube. So there you go. But I did find that like one way to build your credit was to get a what's the word, to get a secured credit card. So being pretty naive, I have to say that's what I did, and I think that was fine. I just know there's better ways to do it. So I went ahead and I got a secured credit card through Wells Fargo. Now I know that that Discover has a secured credit card, and I think it's a better option. I think it may not have, it maybe doesn't have a fee, but in either case, it gives you rewards. So I think Discover is the way to go. And of course, now there's some different apps like Self Lender, so you can kind of do the same thing, but it's a little bit of a different scenario. I'm going to real quick just talk about what I did. So I, through Wells Fargo, got a secured credit card. From my research, I saw that there were a variety of different amounts I could pay for the privilege of securing my own credit card. But Wells Fargo wasn't bad. It was $25. So that's like a yearly fee, but the goal is that you will not have to pay it for more than a year. So $25 or less, I wouldn't pay more for this privilege if I were you. And I put the minimum amount that I could, which was $300. When I read reviews, which, you know, Wells Fargo has a lot of bad reviews, people had put down like $1,000 or more, but you don't need to do that, and I wouldn't recommend it. I put the minimum, which at Wells Fargo was $300. And I put my phone bill on that card, and that was the only thing. I didn't even carry the card around. I was like a little bit afraid of it in a way, but I put my phone bill on it. And when I was getting the card, the personal banker that I was talking to had recommended something, which I did, and I'm going to tell you about, but I don't necessarily think you have to do it. But I have to say I did it and it worked. So she recommended that I put the phone bill on it and that I pay it off almost in full every month. And her rationale, whether this is true or not, I don't know. Her rationale was that if I just paid off 100% every month, that it wouldn't report to the credit bureaus. Is that true? I don't know. But I paid off basically everything but $1. So if my bill was $63, I would pay off $62. And within about 6 months, 6 or 8 months, I finally got graduated. So that's what happens if you've shown that you are, using the card well. The goal is for your secured card to graduate. So that $300 was dumped back into my savings account, and I then had a card with its own limit, and they actually brought it up to $1,000, which it still is at today. And that was great. It took less than a year. I think once all was said and done, it was a little more than a year, but I didn't have to pay $25 again. I didn't have to pay that annual fee again. And then pretty quickly after, I applied for a Chase card, I think the Chase Freedom card, because by then I had found YouTube, personal finance YouTube, and I found Ask Sebby, which is great, amazing. And I decided that, I'm entry level, but I wanted to maybe get in on this Chase situation. So I applied for the Chase Freedom card, and I got it, and I got a pretty good limit. Of course, what the limit is doesn't really matter because I'm paying it off every month, but where it does matter is just that 30% of your score is utilization. And so basically, that's the first thing I did to build my credit. Now the things that I've been doing, I just want to talk a little bit about the different parts of the score. So they're in order here. Obviously, 35% is your payment history. And I have to say, even when I didn't have any credit cards, I was probably doing okay because I had student loans and I always paid them on time. I have that automated. Any utilities, anything like that reports to the credit bureaus, I have automated so that it is always paid on time. Something that I did once I got a credit card was I automated that payment as well. And what I've done is I've automated it to pay the minimum payment. I always go in manually and pay the full amount off. But just in case I got distracted or I was traveling or something, I want to make sure that at least the minimum payment is paid on time so that I continue to have like 100% pure payment history. Okay. The next biggest one is utilization. And so a lot of people will recommend this. If you want to get your credit score to rise and you already have credit cards, start paying them off. Utilization is basically how much of your credit are you using. So that first credit card, I had $300. They say I had a $300 limit. And so the sort of conventional wisdom is to keep what you're using at less than 30%. So I was paying my phone bill, which was like $70 at the time. So that's a little less than 30%. But actually what is ideal is if you can keep it under 10%, you're going to get really good. You're going to see movement if you can get your credit utilization under 10%. But I mean, under 30 is better than nothing. The point is that you want to have as much free space as possible, as little utilization as possible. That's 30% of your score. So it's a great way to raise your score quickly. Then length of credit, 15%. So this is one of the reasons why you shouldn't close credit cards, even if you're not using them anymore. And of course, there are some people who don't believe in using credit cards. And if you're one of those people, that's fine. But if you can use credit cards without sort of compromising, because I mean, I know it's hard. It was hard for me too back in the day. But if you can use credit cards without racking up debt, then you basically want to keep them open. And, say you're not using a card anymore, don't close it. And something important to know is that if you don't use a card ever, they can close it on you. And if they do that, your length of credit history is shortened, and so your credit score will go down. So what I recommend and what I do is I have each of my credit cards, even if I'm not really using them, because maybe they're not the thing that's getting me the most points in like the travel hacking arena. I have them linked to some bill, say my Hulu or my, monthly cat food delivery, whatever it is, I have it linked. And that way I know it's getting used once a month. They're not going to close it on me. Now, do you need to link every single credit card to something? No, but your oldest credit card, like Wells Fargo, I'm not a huge fan of them, but I'm going to have that credit card forever because it was my first one. Length of credit isn't just like how long you've had them. It's equation and it's math, and I'm not really going to get into it, but Ask Sebby has a really good video, and I'll link his channel down below. But basically what you're really concerned about is your oldest cards. He calls them anchor cards. And yeah, you just want to make sure they're linked to something so that they don't get closed on you. Yeah, so another way to improve your length of credit, or to help somebody else improve their length of credit, is to have somebody like your, a parent or a trusted friend add you to their credit card. Now, the thing about this, and I'm like, I don't know how to explain it. I've had rough times, and I've been that bad money person, and so I would never ask my parents to add me to their credit card, or like one of my siblings or something, because I don't know, I don't not trust myself, but just in a way, I just don't want to put anyone in that position. But I have to say, the thing about adding someone to your card is that you don't have to give them a card. You can just add them. So if you, for some reason, really need to improve your length of credit, I guess maybe if I go to buy a house, I might ask my sibling or something to add me. At that point, we'll see how my credit score is going. But anyway, that is something that you can do. I'm not necessarily recommending it. And obviously, length of credit is like pretty low. It's only 15%. So if you add someone or you have someone add you and their utilization is out of control, that's a bigger part of the score. So then that could cancel it out. So you only want to be added or add somebody if you or they have a low utilization. Does that make sense? Last 10% is new credit. So this is hard pulls. So this could be for, I have utility from like moving 3 years ago on mine. New credit cards, of course. You want to keep an eye on this. It's a pretty low amount. If you're doing credit card hacking or if you're doing travel hacking, sorry, then, you're going to be getting some new cards. So that will play into things, but it usually bounces back pretty quickly. And after, I think, 3 years, they fall off. After a certain period of time, they fall off. And then last but not least is credit mix. And I have to say, this is like what different types of loans you have. And I guess maybe this part looks better if you have multiple loans, like credit cards and student loans and car loans and a mortgage. But should you get more loans than you need? No, hell no, you shouldn't. I don't know. I don't have a I don't have a car loan. I will never ever have a car loan. And I have student loans and credit cards, and that's all I have. And I will tell you at the end of the video what my credit score is. So I don't think that really either of these are so super important. Certainly the other three have a bigger impact. And I've seen over just the last 2 years, so that story I told you is just like 2.5 years ago. So I had basically no credit score. And I think I'm just going to look at my notes and make sure I covered everything. Okay, I think that's everything. So basically, this is just like less than 3 years ago that this whole process started for me. And currently on Credit Karma, my scores, they show you two different bureaus, are about 750 and about 775. So I'm doing pretty good. I think I have worked hard. My main thing that I do is I keep my utilization low. My length of credit is not long at all. It's the only kind of red mark that I have, and that's because it's only a few years old. I have done travel hacking, so I've had some credit pulls, and it hasn't seemed to impact me too much. Sometimes I'll get a dip, and then it shoots back up. Something I notice, I do keep my utilization as low as possible, but because I pay my bills for the month and then pay off the card, I don't pay it off early, and so it reports. And I do notice sometimes there'll be a dip if the main card I'm using goes up a little, but then it'll shoot back up a little higher, a point or two higher, when I pay it off at the end of the month. So basically, yeah, and the payment history is the main thing. Automate everything. I'm trying to work towards having it automated so that I know I have sort of everything ready to go, so I can just pay the whole amount off in full. But until I feel really comfortable doing that, I am just automating the minimum payment, and it totally works. I go in though and I manually pay off because I don't want to pay any interest. Y'all know about me and interest. So yeah, the main things are payment history, utilization, and length of credit. New credit and credit mix, obviously they're important. You don't want to be like getting a million pulls. But I don't think they're super duper important. We'll see eventually one day my student loans will fall off, and we'll see what happens. But frankly, I'm pretty happy with my, high 700s credit score. And I hope that you can build your credit score too, if that's something you're trying to do. Let me know down below, or share with everyone down below if you've got any tips for raising your credit score, or if you have an interesting story about your credit. And if you have any tips for me, of course, I always want to hear them. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you later.